Music theory with Microsoft Excel. Auto-transposable music system through all 12 collections of 7 notes, automatically rotatable through all 7 modal perspectives, changing the tonic upon rotation. Part number 7. Get ready and some coffee because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin', for which Microsoft Excel is mandatory. It's not an if thing, it's a mandatory. In Excel. If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay because we basically built this from a blank worksheet but started in a prior presentation. So if you want to build this entire worksheet from a blank sheet, you could begin back there or just build the part of the table that we're currently working on. If you do have access to this workbook though, 4 tabs down below, including a very colorful fretboard tab we may refer to, the example tab, in essence the answer key, practice tab having pre-formatted cells so you can practice the practice problem with less Excel formatting. But if you don't have any of that, that's okay because we will continue to work in the blank tab where we started from scratch with a blank worksheet, and we'll be continuing to work in essence, the blank part of the worksheet, practicing not only our music skills, but our Excel formatting skills as well, for formatting's sake. Let's give a quick recap of what we have done thus far and what our objective is. The objective being to have a system to write down our musical informations, our songs, our melodies, even if it's by hand, in as efficient a way as possible so that we can automatically transpose that information to all 12 collections of 7 notes and possibly even rotate that information to each of the 7 modal perspectives of all 12 collections of 7 notes, changing the tonic as we go through the rotation. We also want to think about how the MIDI systems and the DAW systems should be set up, allowing this possibility, which is the way I believe they will be sometime into the future, hopefully sooner rather than later, and let's try to make that happen here. So we started by mapping out basically a MIDI kind of numbering system, which is an absolute numbering system taking into account octaves, useful for a computer behind the scenes, not as useful for human beings, even though a numbering system in and of itself is useful. And that's why we have the human numbering system, 1 through 12 for the 12 notes. Here's the notes that we have. And then we also wanted to look at relative positions and give a numbering system for them, that being the 7 notes in our collections of notes that could be named by nodal point or by the Nashville number system. We then looked at our chords, remembering that old school sheet music, as well as like a DAW system, doesn't really often use chords because in an orchestra they had multiple people building chords with multiple instruments and whatnot. But if you're building something off of one instrument, then it'd be nice that if you could build a chord with it, and that would be useful, such as tablature music for like guitar, for example. So to have the most efficient system to jot down our information, we would like to be able to use the basic chords that are in all, that use the 7 notes in the collection of 7 notes. We would also like to be able to do it once again from the Nashville number perspective, naming not the note point, but the modal point, allowing the chords to be transposable to all 12 collections, as well as possibly rotatable. Now, what we're working on now is the idea that the chord itself could then be named by modal points, meaning the Nashville numbers, the points that make up the chord. And that will help us to map out our information. We'll come back to that shortly. We then said, hey, look, let's look at our 12 collections of notes, but look at them from the perspective of the Nashville numbers, meaning 12 Nashville numbers, but only 7 numbers that are going to be in the collection. The other 5 numbers having a 0.5, noting that they're outside of the collection of 7 notes, but still available to us, giving us the ability to rotate the perspective to all 12 collections of 7 notes with just like a turn of the dial, as a DAW should be able to do. And then we have the actual data input, which is how I would recommend, even if by hand, doing the data input, in that you could say, this is the column that we're working on, or this is the key that we're going to be in, and then write everything on one row instead of in a DAW system where we're going to be stacking everything on top of each other that's going to be within 1 octave. Meaning, we could write the Nashville numbers instead of note numbers, and we could represent the chords without note points but relative position. That means that you don't have to rewrite anything if you're in a different collection of notes. You just name one of the 12 collections of notes, you name the middle point or the tonic, and then everything is all automatically transposable. Now you could write it traditionally like this, where we do reference the notes instead of the nodal points, but a DAW system or even a ChatGTP or whatever should be able to transpose that or convert that into this. And by doing so, it should easily be able to rotate it. So whatever data input we want to do, the DAW that we're working in should be able to have the 2 dials of allowing it to rotate this around, transpose it, and rotate around the modes. Now, as we convert this over to our DAW system, then we note that it would be broken out. This row here would be broken out into all of these rows that would expand to the right in the same distance as the orange part here. And that means that we're just going to break this thing out into 12 different notes, meaning 1 octave. Now, last time we did that, and it was great, we said, okay, how could we do that just from a technical standpoint? And we broke the problem into two sides, meaning there's going to be 2 types of representations in the DAW. One, I want to be able to represent things by chords. That's easier. That'll be useful for people that are writing in a DAW, particularly those that don't know music theory. And I also want to be able to write them by notes or relative Nashville number position, or by notes like this, right? I want them to be able to do that as well. Whatever the system is, the DAW should be able to convert to this numbering system, which is the DAW numbers. And then that means that I have 2 different things I need to pull over. If it's a number, then I can use this formula we figured out. We could say, hey, look, if it's a number, I can use this formula, which is just going to look up that amount and see if this amount fits the same amount that's over there, and that will, if it does, it'll give us return that number. And so we can see this whole bit worked. This whole bit works because we copied that up into the range. That's this rising bit right there as it's going up in pitch. And then we said, well, this one's more difficult because this represents a chord, and the chord has at least 3 notes in it, could have up to 7 notes in it. So the way we did that is we said, hey, look, I want you to go here and see if you can find this point, that note, in our list of chords, which is over here, list of chords, and then tell me if the note that I'm on, the relative position, the Nashville number, is part of the chord. Meaning this is the Ionian, the 3 is the Phrygian, and the 5 is the mixed Lydian. If you start on the Lydian, you've got a Lydian, and then the 6 is going to be the Aeolian, and then the 1 is the Ionian. So that worked. So I go over here and I say, that works. So I could do that. So now these chords mapped out. This one chord gave me 3 notes. This one chord gave me 4 notes. This one chord gave me 5 notes. Great. But there's a problem. That problem being that I would like the chord to be in normal order, meaning the tonic should be the lowest note in the chord, and it rises from that point. And you can see here that doesn't really happen. If I build something on a G chord, the G is in this octave. It's great because everything in this orange area is in 1 octave, 1 12-octave position starting from this C to that B. But if I build a chord that's more than 3 notes, it's going to extend up into the higher octave past that 12-note range. So that means that this orange bit, when I put a chord in here, the root of the chord, the lowest note, is in this range. But if I don't want it to be inverted but a normal chord, it should reach out of the range. The last note might be reaching out of the range depending on where the start of the note is. That's what I would like to do. So instead of having it formatted this way, where it's going to force it to be within the range by using inverted chords, I would like a chord to extend out here when necessary in order to have normal construction, the lowest note, the root note being the lowest note. All right, so how do we do that? So I want to do that, and then I need to combine these two things together so that we have one long formula that will do everything for us. Okay, so that's where we're at. Long recap. So if I go over here, how can we do that? Well, notice that these right here, you can see like this one right here has a 4, 6, 1, and 3. Now this 1 and 3 are correct because it's going to have an Ionian node in it and a Phrygian node. But these two nodes are lower in the numbering system than the 4 and the 6. So what I really want it to be able to do is to be counting up from that point. One way to do this is to use an absolute Nashville number system taking into consideration octaves. So instead of just going from 1 to 7 and then starting back over at 1, we continue to 8 and beyond. For example, this is a Lydian chord that has Nashville numbers 4, 6, 1, representing the Lydian, the Aeolian, and the Ionian. However, the 1 is less than the 4, which could result in us having an inverted chord when we map it out. We could say, hey, look, let me just keep on counting upwards. If this number is less than the 1 before it, we want you to go up to the next one up, which would be 8. So 8 is still an Ionian node. It's just going to be an octave higher. So let's map that out over here. I'm going to put my cursor here, and I'm going to add some columns, and we'll show what that looks like. And we'll insert, not cells. I can double click over here to get rid of that. It's copying cells for some reason. Right click and insert, boom. We'll make this a little bit larger here. And then, okay, so then let's copy this bit. I'll copy this whole thing, and I'm gonna paste it right here, boom. And then I'm gonna delete this one. I don't need that anymore, delete that. And then we'll make this one a skinny. So we'll take that skinny and we'll put it right there, bam. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is do a formula, but see how this formula is actually more complicated than what we're going to do this time, because what we did here is say, hey, look, if it goes greater than 8, what I want you to do is subtract 7, so it only has 1 through 7. So we made it go around in a circle, in a lap. Now we're just going to remove that restriction. I'm just going to say go up as high as you want. So let's say enter. I'm just going to say this is going to equal the 1 plus 2. That's how we build a chord. We take every other modal half step. I'm going to copy that this way. Boom. Now these I need to delete these, but let's keep them for now, and I'll try to do this as efficiently as possible. I'm going to copy this all the way down. So we'll copy this all the way down, and then I'll paste it 1, 2, 3 so it doesn't, or paste it formulas only so it doesn't mess up the color coding. So we'll say okay. And then I'll select all of these and double click on them, making this one maybe a little bit larger. So now we have everything mapped out there. And now I want to delete the bits that we don't need. So this is a 3-note chord. So this should be deleted. I'm going to color code it first. That should be deleted. These should be deleted because it's a 4-note chord. These should be deleted, and that should be deleted. So I'm going to make that gray, drop down. I will make it, I don't know, like that gray, boom. And so now I can kind of see which ones need to be deleted. So let's go ahead and copy that. I'll format paint that down here on just the blue ones, and I'll format paint that down here, and then format paint that down here, okay? And then on the green ones, let's do this one at a time. I'll format paint this here. I'll format paint this here. I'll format paint this here, and I'll format paint this here. And then I'll take this whole bit and format paint that to the green side. Boom. And then boom. And now instead of deleting them, I'm going to put an N. And the reason I want an N is because I want a table. I want to have a table there that that I could use. So I'm just gonna put an N, and that means when I put a formula, at least something's in the cell, so that it'll be a little bit easier for me to do formulas for this entire column if something is in there. So I'm gonna say N, 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 and then N, 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 and then N, N, and then N. And let's do that here. We'll say N, 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 and then N, 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 and then N, N. Oh no, not there. Not there. N, and N. And I'll do that here. So we'll go N, 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 and then N, 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 and then N, N, and then N, and then N, 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 and then N, 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 and N. Almost there. Two more. So N, 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 and then N, 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 and then N, N. I could have copied and pasted it. This might not be the most efficient way I could have done it. I thought you were trying to be efficient. I know, but we'll work with that. Okay, so those are going to be the numbers. So now I want it. So now this chord is represented by a 4, 6, 8. The 8 is over the local distance of 7, so it's still going to be 8 minus 7, which is 1, but now it's going to represent it as an octave up. So, okay, so how can I then map that on over to my DAW system? So right here, I've got my relative positions 1 through 7, which also includes the 0.5s for the half steps. There's 12 notes, but there's 7 notes that are in the collection of notes. I have 12 notes here, which is our local numbering system, and then this is my absolute numbering system for the DAW, which keeps going up. So notice that this numbering system is starting over as I go up to the next section, the next octave. So what I'm going to do is insert. I'm going to go to BY, right-click, and insert. And the middle point's going to be the same. I'm going to say this is going to be 1 through 7. And you can see the formula is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 and then half back to here. Meaning the ones that are in the middle, those are the ones that have a 0.5. The 0.5s that are not whole numbers, those are the 5 notes that are in essence, the ocean. Now up here, as I go up, I want to make this an 8. I think the easiest way to do it is to actually say this is going to be the one below, all the way down here, plus 7, because that will properly take in the 0.5s that I want to do. The next one needs to be not 9, it needs to be 9.5. See, this is a nice easy way to copy that up and pick at the 9.5. So I'm going to copy this all the way up and paste just the formulas, make this a little larger. Okay, so then that makes sense, because here, once again, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 back to half gets me to 15. And those are all the whole numbers. All the whole numbers from the formula: whole, whole, half, whole, 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 and then back half to here. What if I go down below it? Well, then I'm going to come to 0. I'm going to get to 0. So I could say, do the same principle. I'm going to take this 7 up top, minus 7. That gets me to 0. I copy that, paste that all the way down here. Right click, paste formulas only. Make this a little larger. It's going to give me negative numbers, but I'm okay with that. Now let's go from the bottom to the top again. So I'm on a 6 on the negative, and the 0.5s are going to be the ones in the ocean. So the ones that do not have 0.5s are whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And then down here, no 0.5s, whole, 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 half, whole, 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 half. Okay, so that looks good. So now I'm just going to use that to map it out. Now this formula, if I double click on this formula, what is it doing? It's saying, what did we do? We said find this cell over here in this area, and then we did a bunch of ORs and say if it's in this column, if that number is in this column, then do that. If the relative position's in this column, then do that, and we did that 7 times. so that if whatever row I'm on in the MIDI system representing one note, which is represented by one Nashville number, it will pull it over if it matches any of those relative to the chord we're on, which in this case I think is a 3 note. Now I want to do the same thing, but I want to use the absolute Nashville numbers that take into consideration octaves. Look at the beauty of this. I can just pull these over. I could just pull these over and go boom. Let's do it this way so I can see the local distance and I can see the Nashville numbers with octaves taken in to consideration. All right, so boom. Bam, just pull those over. And there we have it. So then I'm going to say enter. So now I have the same thing there. Let me, so does that work? And now what I want to do is now, and see it's representing this cell, I want to pull all those over to this cell. So again, the easiest way to do that is just to pull it over, I think. You have to do it multiple times. I don't think there's a way to pull all of them at once. Oh man, I messed up. But you can just do, but still you could also use a find and replace. But I think this actually, a lot of times, is such a nice visual way to see it. You can see the formula changing as I go. I should zoom in a little bit more so I can grab it a little bit easier. But you can see now that should have changed all of it, and it's still going to have a mixed reference where a mixed reference is needed for this cell, which is at BY36. BY36 is in there. Hopefully, like right here, still has a $sign for the mixed reference. So I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it through, I think, to here, right? Because those are all the places where we look at the formula. And this time I'm going to go all the way up to here to see if it reaches above. So before I paste it, notice what I expect to happen is for these ones out here in particular to not be down here, but to reach up into the blue area. Right click formulas only, boom. See, so now now my G chord starts in the range that I'm in, but it's not going to create an inverted chord. It's going to reach the 3 chords in the last one of the chord. This D, instead of it placing it down here and making it an inverted chord, the lowest note being lower in pitch than the root, it put it up here properly. So that's normal chord construction. So I'm thinking that a DAW system should be able then to give you all the chords that would be in the normal in the normal 7-note collection in normal order. Now again, a DAW system could probably give you chords that are inverted, so you could have the option of inverting them and so on and so forth. But at the least, they should give you all those chords you would think, and that's doable. As you can see here, that's doable. Now obviously, if I was to map out like this column, which is an octave up, that would start in the blue column here, right? And then if I build chords in that column, they would be reaching up into the green column. I'm not going to do that, but I just note that I think it's possible. So if you were to build this in like a DAW system, you would have to take this formula and the formulas that are from this cell in the blue area that would be mapped up this way. And then when I get to the green, you'd have to take the cells that could be reaching up there, and then this one would be mapped out into the green area. So that would be a complex formula in Excel, but I think the principle is logically doable, and therefore a database, if someone wants to build this in a database, I think it's it's proven to be doable to do that. Anyway, so I think someone should do that. Okay, so now we're left with the problem though. So that works, that's cool, because now I've mapped this out. These can be mapped out and these can be mapped out, but they're in 2 different formulas. So like if I change this here to a 60, then it doesn't know what to do with that, right? So let's go, so now I need to combine these 2 together. How could I combine them together? I could use some kind of if logic and say, okay, if it's a formula, do this, adding another if logic in front of it, and if it's not a formula, do that. But I already have like this bit, which is an X lookup over here, and the end of the X lookup is like, what do you do if that's not true? We have that option in an X lookup. So look at what this one is doing. This one is saying like, find that find that 60, find this 60 in that cell, and if it's there, if that 60 is there, then return to me that 60. But if it's not there, then give me double quotes, or then I added this if in A, give me double quotes. So let me copy this down and do this a little bit better. I'm going to copy this over here and say, okay, what can I want to double click and copy it so that it doesn't change the relative formats, and then paste it in, double click and paste it. So now this is the exact same thing up here. It didn't change the relative positions. And then I'm going to say, okay, like I could get rid of this if. This is giving me the logic that if there's nothing in that cell, what do I do if it's an NA? So I'm going to say, let's remove that for now and just look at the X lookup. Here's the X lookup bit. And so the problem is that if this 60 was like nothing, like a 0, then you get an NA. But I can fix that by saying if it's not true, instead of doing the NA formula, it would be better if at the end of this I put another comma, and then this is like, what if it's not found? Double quotes. I can do that instead of the NA. That's more efficient. I should have done that before. So then it's 0. So there's 0 there, or if I put a 60 here, it should populate as a 60. Okay, that's great. Now I can take that one step further and say, well, look, if it's not there, I don't want you to make it double quotes. I want you to do this, right? So you're gonna see if there's a number there. If you see the number matches that number, then fine, give me that number. But if it doesn't, do this whole thing. I can just embed that in there. Let me show you. We'll just take that whole thing and say, just take that whole thing, copy, enter, and then paste it here. Now the relative formula is going to be wrong, but I'll fix it. We'll say boom, boom, do that if it's not there. Okay, it still gives me the 60. That makes sense. But what if this was blank? Or what if it was in 5p or something? And let's make this yellow to indicate that's the one we're playing with right now. What if that was the case? Well, then it's going to do something different. Oh, it changed it up here. It didn't do it here. Why not? Let me see. Oh, get this thing out of here. Get out of here. You're in my way, thing. All right. So I have to say this. So notice this one's looking here, but this one's still over here. So I need all of this looking in the same spot. So I'm going to just pull these over. It's going to say pull this over here, 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 pull this over here. Okay, and now enter. So it still gave me nothing. Yeah, I think that makes sense actually, because I'm on the 60. It has to be something with an Ionian. Let's go back on over here and say this is an Ionian. See, it's because it has to be something from the Ionian node. Yeah, there we go. So then it pulls over. So that makes sense. So now it's pulling over whether it's a chord or whether it's just a number. If this was 60, it's pulling over. So I think that works. So what if I copied this back this way? Then it still gives me a 60 over here. So that works. So I think it's good. So let's go ahead. I'm going to copy this whole thing. I'm going to copy this whole thing and say copy, enter, and then I'll paste this all the way across. Up here, all the way across to how far away does it go? Out here. And then I'll go right click and paste the formulas. Did I lose it? Something went wrong. Well, let's do it this way. Let's do this first. I gotta copy it here. I'm gonna copy this. And let's put it up in the proper position right here. Paste it right there. Boom. And then I don't copy the formula. I copy that cell. That's what I did wrong. Copy the cell. I'm gonna bring it all the way across this way, and then up, and then right click and paste just the formulas. All right, so that worked, except now I've got all these problems. Why did that happen? That happened because this is referring over here and there's nothing in it. There's nothing in that cell, I think is the problem. Where's it referring? So it's not returning anything. So that's when I need the NA. So what I'm saying is if you haven't, so it looks correct, see the pattern's correct, but now you've got this NA returning. So now I'm just gonna say, all right, I could just embed this in an NA thing. Let's just do this and say, just put a, so if NA is our formula for that, and I'm just gonna say, if it's an NA at the end of this whole thing, comma, if it's NA, then what do you want to do if it's an NA? We want you to just double quotes, put nothing there, meaning text with nothing in the middle. Close it up, enter. Let's try it again. Copy that, and we'll paste it across and see if that fixes the situation. And right click and paste formulas. Boom. So I think that worked. See, bam. All right. So now, so that was more like an Excel exercise than a minute, but you can see that's totally doable. So then up top, this is in the second grid. So let's make this a different color. I will make this like blue maybe, and bordered. Blue and bordered. And then up here is in the next range. Let's make that green and bordered. Green and bordered. Doot. Okay, so that's cool. And that's how, and then down here we can make this blue as well. I'll just finish my color scheme. So we'll make this blue out here, and blue and bordered, and then this will be green. Green and bordered, and boom. So 2 octaves up, 2 octaves down from that middle position. All right. So that looks good. So that's totally doable. So now we can represent something this way in a database. We should be able to go back and forth, meaning I should be able to enter it like this. The database should be able to map it out like this to take into consideration the absolute position. They should be able to write it like this if we want, or vice versa, write it like this first and then convert it to that. And then this, I don't know what happened down here. These got messed up somewhere along the way, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. And then this should be able to be mapped out into a stacked note kind of perspective like this. You should be able to go back and forth. And I do think if you can do this, like this part, then you could map out the next octave up. I should be able to, if that's the octave we're working on, we should be able to go to the next octave up, meaning map out this blue section to take into consideration that row as well as this row as it reaches into that area as well because of the chord construction. And so I won't do that, but I think it's doable, right? You can easily just copy the same thing and at the least say either this or that, right? And this or that. Okay, so that's going to be that. So the next thing we want to do is say, now that we can map that out, is to try to transpose this. So if I can do this from the perspective of the C, if I'm seeing this from the collection of notes around C major, then I should also be able to see it through all other collections of notes, transposing this whole thing up automatically. So we want to do that, and we should also be able to rotate this thing around modally, changing the tonic, which is a little bit more tricky because then we have to deal with the formula that could put things out of whack, but I think that would be a cool thing that should be available in a DAW system, should have the ability to do that in a more advanced system. It should be able to do that easy, right? We should be able to do that. Okay.